Okay, it appears that we are now live, so welcome anybody who happens to be watching to the special meeting of Council for Tuesday, November the 17th. I'll call the meeting to order and look to the agenda. Are there any additions, changes to the agenda?
Nothing from administration, Mayor Borman.
Thank you. In which case I'll move the agenda be approved as presented. Those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. And we'll just go right to the one item of business, item F1, the Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2020-14, the Van Horne Direct Control District. I'll look to administration before I take the postponed motion off the table, if administration wants to say anything before that occurs.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. I have a I have a presentation. I will try and be fairly brief in going through that here. So I'll just run council through that. So I'm just going to run through the Van Horne Direct Control District and summarize a little bit of what we heard at the public hearing and just remind council of the relevant legislation. And then council can consider second reading. So quick reminder, this applies to the 7 lots as identified on the map here, shown in orange. I want to clarify at first reading that there was some question as to whether or not it applied only to 2 of the lots or really impacted some of the lots differently, and it doesn't. It applies to all 7 of the lots equally. So I think that's an important piece to clarify. So as a quick reminder, it's very similar to an R1 district, but has some nuances. The main one of which is to reestablish a 60-meter building setback from the Bow River. This slide shows an approximation of the proposed setbacks. So the yellow is what is in place right now based on the wording in the land use bylaw. And if approved, it would require all new construction and additions to be a minimum of 60 meters from the bank of the Bow River, which is effectively or approximately the blue line shown on this map here. Pretty sure you can all see that, but it's this blue line here. And that's generally in alignment with what was applied at the time that some of the lots had developed in the past. And that was based on a clause in the municipal development plan. Quick summary of notification. On August 11th, notice was sent to all of the properties. This is a 60-meter buffer from the subject lands, and so it included all of the properties that buffer touched. It was sent to the addresses on the town's tax assessment roll, or the registered, or the designated agent, depending on how people had registered their properties. On October 2nd of this year, first reading was approved by council. Notification was then sent out to all of the same properties, which is a statutory requirement of the notice of the public hearing, and that was held on November 3rd. And then the motion for second reading was postponed. So at the public hearing, we heard a number of speakers and correspondents in support of the proposed bylaw, including a number of reasons, which I've sort of tried to summarize there: regulatory consistency, view preservation, allowing space for wildlife. There was concern about a lack of awareness of the setback changes, maintaining an orderly streetscape seen from Van Horne, sort of the front of the properties, keeping development further from the recreational trail that is between the subject lands and the Bow River, and having equity between all 7 property owners. It was not unanimous. There was correspondence and a speaker in opposition to the proposed amendment. I'm sure everyone remembers that the speaker was sort of representing the one of the landowners that owns 2 of the properties, as well as their representative who has been involved in the process as well. So they raised a number of concerns around the appropriateness of a direct control district, the degree of public interest versus private interest, especially in light of the intent of the application was one of the concerns they raised. Lack of information regarding previous policy decisions, a reduction in the development area on the properties, basically the difference between the yellow and the blue line on one of the previous slides I showed, and concern about creating some financial uncertainty for those investing in the area. So the legislative authority is clearly given by the Municipal Government Act, and so it provides some high-level direction regarding the purpose of planning regulations. It was pointed out in the public hearing that I had an error in one of the slides where it was combined that all of this text was in Part B, and it's not the case. So the purpose of the planning regulations is to allow municipalities to achieve the orderly, economic, and beneficial development of land use patterns and land use settlements, and to maintain and improve the quality of the physical environment, and both of these without infringing on the rights of individuals for any public interest, except to the extent that is necessary for the overall greater public interest. So that's the key piece there, I guess, is balancing those limitations. So the role for council, council must act in good faith in the pursuit of orderly development, in the public interest, not be motivated by the sole objective of blocking a proposed subdivision or development. So that's the job of council, is to weigh the public and private interests served by the proposed bylaw amendment. So this council has to turn its mind to if they are satisfied that the issues raised with the application have merit beyond the interests of limited property owners. And if it does, then it's within their jurisdiction to change the planning regulations. So in summary, there are potential benefits to individual landowners in the form of protected views. There's benefit to the greater public. Administration believes with respect to adjacency of development to the trail, but there are potential detriments to other individual landowners, which are private interests. So the application does have some public benefit, as I mentioned, and administration really sees the key pieces there around the separation of development from the trail, but also providing clarity on development regulations and ensuring consistency in buildable areas for adjacent lots. So with that, administration is recommending that council take postponed motion from the October 2nd meeting, or sorry, the November 2nd meeting off the table, and then council consider giving second and third reading to the land use bylaw amendment. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fish. Are there questions from members of council for Mr. Fish? I see none, so thanks for that brief presentation. With that, I will then move that council take postponed motion 261-2020 from the table. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. So this time I'll move that council give second reading to the Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2020-14, Van Horne Direct Control District. And speaking to the motion, Councillor McCallum. In one moment. If you're talking, we're not hearing you. You're mute.
Unmute.
There you go.
Now, sorry about that. I was looking at 3 or 4 different screens on one screen and was struggling. So I do have some amendments that I'd like council to consider to the bylaw, if possible, your worship.
Okay,
So I have a couple of amendments, and I'm hoping that the clerk, I've sent them to her in advance. So the first one is with regards to the purpose statement. I'd like to, you'll see in red line there, what I'd like to have removed from the purpose statement. And that is to preserve existing view sheds and help facilitate wildlife movement. And the reason why I'd like to remove that have that removed or have council consider removing that from the purpose statement is that, as we know that there are, except for a handful of key view sheds, there's really, the MDP does not protect view sheds in general throughout town. And so I think it might be in the best interest of this bylaw to have that removed. And we also know that although wildlife might move through that area, it is not a wildlife corridor. And so I wouldn't want to set expectations up by keeping that within the purpose statement of the bylaw. And I'm hoping that council will consider that first amendment.
thank you, Councillor. I'll speak to your amending motion and speak in support. I agree with your rationale. This bylaw isn't about preserving view sheds. And as you've noted, though, I mean, I walk that trail regularly and see evidence of wildlife regularly. That's also not, it's not a designated corridor, and through including this in bylaw, a future reader may misunderstand that. So I think it's a good amendment, and I'll support this. Councillor Hillstead. I can't hear you, Councillor.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
There we go. I hear that. No, I don't. Ain't technology grand?
It's failing me.
Well, I can hear you now.
See is messy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. I will also support the amendment. I actually had the exact same amendment, but Joanna beat me, or Councillor McCallum beat me to it. So, so for the exact same reasons that Councillor McCallum stated, I'll support this amendment. Sorry.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there other discussion on the amending motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question then on the amendment. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Councillor McCallum, you had another amendment you said?
I do. I have several. So within permitted uses, I would like to remove detached dwelling and insert it from permitted use to discretionary use. And I'm looking to the clerk as if that's the right way to do it, is to move it. Is that how I would propose the motion?
That works.
Okay. And again, it's just to keep it in line with R1, other R1 districts, as we heard from the applicant's rep, that the actual reason for this is to talk about the rear setback and a few other things. And so I would just like to keep this in line with all other R1 neighborhoods that we have in Canmore. And I hope council would like to support this.
So the motion is simply to remove detached dwelling from permitted uses?
Permitted uses and insert it in discretionary uses.
And if that were to be approved, we would be left with a bylaw that doesn't have detached dwellings or anything other than accessory dwelling units.
Which is why I was looking for some advice from the clerk on how to properly do this to not leave us in that position, Your Worship.
Yeah, a friendly amendment to your amendment would be to simply add the words with an ADU, which I believe was your intent.
Okay.
To detached dwelling.
Absolutely. That works as well.
So is that clear then to the rest of council? Okay, so that's reflected on the screen to reflect wording in the permitted uses to note that detached dwelling units with an accessory dwelling unit is a permitted use. Everybody?
Mayor Borman,
Thank
sorry,
you.
may I interject here?
Mhm.
And perhaps you were going here anyways, but I do think adding detached dwelling to the discretionary uses is required, not just adding with an accessory dwelling unit,
Right.
right?
So that would be, you would suggest that's included in the same motion rather than a second amending motion?
Correct. Yes, in the same motion.
Okay. I
So-
wasn't sure how to do this, so that's why I was looking to the clerk for some advice.
Yeah, so you would just add, as you suggested, Mayor Borman, with an accessory dwelling unit to the detached dwelling wording under permitted uses, and then add detached dwelling under discretionary uses.
Right, is that clear to members of council? It's reflected on the screen we're looking at, other than the common amenity housing, which is not part of this motion. So speaking to that amending motion then?
Myself, yes, thank you. So again, I'm working here to align this land use with other R1 land uses. And other R1 land uses, as per our most recent update to the land use bylaw, includes detached dwellings to be in a discretionary use, and detached dwelling with accessory dwelling units to continue as a permitted use. So that is the change. And then my next motion, I think you can probably see where this is going, is I would like to reinsert common amenity housing as well in the discretionary uses, which is, and again, in alignment with R1 neighborhoods.
Yeah, so let's deal with,
One at a time, of course.
unless you want to expand the motion to include the addition of common amenity housing. So all of those 4 changes as one amending motion, which works.
Sure, we can do that as well. Whatever you
Yep.
think is best, Your Worship.
Sure, it's your motion. If you're comfortable with that, then it's simpler. So
That's great.
you accept that friendly amendment to you.
Absolutely.
So then what's reflected on the screen that we're looking at in red is would be the result of this motion if it was approved. All councillors understand the intent. I'll speak in support of the amendment as proposed for the same reasons that Councillor McCallum noted. This wording is more reflective of what we've added into the land use bylaw for other residential districts. So it would be in keeping with recent approach, recent decisions of council on the land use bylaw. So for that reason, I would be happy to support this amending motion. Other discussion from other members of council on the amending motion? Seeing none, call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. So we're back then to the primary motion as amended. The council gives second reading the land use bylaw amendment 2020-14 Van Horne Direct Control District as amended. Are there other amendments to be proposed? Seeing none, then speaking to that amended motion, I'll support the motion as amended. For some evident reason, well, reasons that have been discussed in previous meetings, but I'm looking at this from the perspective of a member of the community that lives in that region, and I walk that trail regularly. It's one of the nicest trails we have in town, and it's heavily used. And when I'm walking east and going past the residences in the Prospect area, it feels, because they're so much closer to the trail, it feels like I'm walking in their backyard at times, to be perfectly honest. And when you move past the Prospect subdivision and get in towards the Van Horne, it just, the vista opens up and you see the houses there. Houses are way far away from the trail. And it's such a more rewarding experience as a trail user. So I really think that this is important for the larger community benefit, to be able to enjoy the use of that trail more regularly. Yeah, that's my primary reason. I really feel that this bylaw as amended will provide greater benefit for the community that use that area recreationally. So support second motion as amended, second reading as amended. Other discussion on Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Mayor Borman. I too will support second reading of this amended motion. Administration supports the proposed amendments and had a number of reasons listed previously on the screen. This bylaw proposes to establish regulations that were previously applied to all 7 properties equally, and this amendment will affect future redevelopment on these properties as well. Some of these buildings are already 20, 25 years old, so this amended motion will affect the future and keep those buildings in the same setback requirement as well. With all the new people coming to the Bow Valley to live, now is not the time to relax the 60-meter setback requirements for these riverfront properties. And as you said, it is a nice place to walk as a resident, and it does benefit all residents to have those setbacks. We can keep our environmental standards high by maintaining that 60-meter setback from the Bow River for all 7 of those properties in this area. And the other point that was raised was that keeping that orderly streetscape is also a consideration. Buildings would have to be closer to the road, benefiting the neighborhood and building that neighborhood connection and interaction. I think that's important as well in these neighborhoods that are long-standing, and to build them cohesively is beneficial. 5 of the 7 buildings are already built with the 60-meter setback requirement, and it still allowed ample room on each property for a reasonably sized building. So I think people did still build some very nice looking buildings even with that 60-meter setback. So I will support the amended motion, and thank you very much.
Further discussion on the motion is amended then, Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mayor Barman. I will support the amended motion. And I appreciate the presentations provided at the public hearing from all parties. And I also appreciate that this bylaw affects all parcels equally within that area. I don't, as I previously insinuated, was I don't support this based on view sheds or wildlife movement. As we know, view sheds are not preserved within the municipal development plan, and wildlife movement, although animals may move through there, that is not a wildlife corridor. What I do support though, and what resonated with me at the public hearing was that council is required to adhere to the principles of orderly development. And that not only includes front yard setbacks, but rear yard setbacks. I also am very much aware that those properties, those parcels are all adjacent to very well-used public space, as Councillor Sanford and Mayor Barman have pointed out. And I am really concerned moving forward as to what that public-private interface might look like as that trail gets busier. I'm also conscious, as Councillor Sanford pointed out, as to what future development could look like These buildings are not going to be there forever, and so new development could occur. And it would be my preference for the people of Canmore to continue to allow those buildings to be closer to the road, and to ensure that there continues a 60-meter setback alongside those properties. So I will be supporting the motion as amended.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hillstead.
Thank you, Mayor Borman. I too will be supporting the amended motion. Basically, again, keeping setbacks uniform throughout the neighborhood, applying them to the same standard as the existing buildings. That's my main reason for it, just to keep the orderly design of the neighborhood. And many of the other reasons that were presented, but my main reason will be just for the uniform setbacks and just for consistency going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mara.
I too will be supporting this amendment. I'm in agreement with everything that everyone has already said. And I'm looking forward to that there will be regulatory consistency moving forward. Like Councillor McCollum said, that will be interesting to see how things move forward as the neighborhood ages, and to also have that 60 meters setback for all people to enjoy along the pathways. And so it benefits the whole community. So that's why I will support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Other discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. With that, then I'll move the council give third reading to Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2020-14, the Van Horne Direct Control District. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I believe that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'll move the special meeting of council be adjourned. Those in favor?